The alien city was quiet, almost eerily so. Massive towers stretched high into the sky, glowing faintly with blue and silver lights. Streets that should have been crowded were empty. Not a single creature moved. Not a single vehicle drove. Even the wind seemed trapped, frozen midair. It was as if the world had suddenly paused. But not everything had stopped. A single human boy, standing near the edge of the city square, moved freely. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was sharp, alive with curiosity and fear. He didn't understand why he was able to move when everything else had frozen, but instinct told him this was an opportunity he could not waste. He glanced around quickly. Alien guards, frozen mid-step, their weapons pointed at invisible targets, looked almost comical. Their smooth, metallic armor glimmered, catching the strange light of the city. The boy swallowed hard. He had heard stories about aliens, about their advanced technology, about their gravity-hacking devices. But he had never imagined seeing one in action. Now, the reality was far more terrifying than he had expected. The humans in his group had tried to resist the aliens before. They had been captured once, almost destroyed, but this was something different. This device, whatever it was, could freeze movement completely. Entire cities could be paralyzed in an instant. Buildings, vehicles, even soldiers, nothing moved. Nothing, except him. He took a careful step forward. His boots barely made a sound on the smooth ground. The frozen city stretched before him like a painting, perfect and unreal. He could see a floating patrol drone, suspended midair as if the wind had stopped. A car hovered a few feet above the road. Even a small cat, mid-leap, was frozen as if caught in a photograph. "Why me?" he whispered under his breath. He had no answer, only a growing sense of responsibility. If he was the only one who could move, then maybe he could make a difference. Maybe he could stop the aliens before they destroyed everything humans had left. He moved cautiously toward the nearest building. Inside, he glimpsed the alien command center, the source of the device's power. Giant machines hummed with energy, wires and tubes snaking like veins. Screens flashed, showing maps of the city, the devices controlling gravity in each district. The boy's eyes widened. This was it. This was the heart of the alien technology. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence. A faint mechanical click. Almost imperceptible. The boy froze. The aliens had noticed him. Or at least something the device had. He ducked behind a frozen guard, barely daring to breathe. The guard's helmet glinted in the dim light, and the boy realized just how dangerous even a motionless alien could be. One wrong move, and he could be crushed or discovered. He peeked around the corner. In the distance, he could see the alien leaders, frozen mid-step, their glowing eyes scanning the city, or so it seemed. But he could feel their awareness, sharp and threatening, even in their stillness. The boy clenched his fists. He had to be careful, one step at a time, one move at a time. The fate of his friends, his city, maybe even the entire human race depended on him. He crept forward, using the frozen landscape to his advantage. Shadows and structures offered cover. Floating debris made perfect platforms for jumping. Every step felt dangerous, every breath heavy with suspense. He could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears, loud and insistent. As he approached the command center, he noticed a strange pattern. Some areas were harder to move through. The device didn't freeze everything equally. Some smaller objects, tiny fragments, trembled slightly, as if resisting the device's power. The boy's mind raced. If he could find the weak points, maybe he could manipulate the device. Maybe he could use it against the aliens themselves. A sudden noise made him freeze again. A drone midair had shifted slightly. His stomach dropped. Something was changing. The device was responding. He realized that his movement might trigger reactions. Every step he took could alert the aliens, even if they seemed frozen. He needed a plan. Fast. He ducked behind a large, floating vehicle and took a deep breath. He remembered the training he had received back on Earth. The strategies humans use when outnumbered, the tactics to outsmart stronger opponents. Those lessons now felt more valuable than ever. Slowly, carefully, he began moving toward the main control panel of the command center. His eyes scanned for any weaknesses, any way to interfere with the gravity-hacking device. Giant tubes carried energy across the room. Sparks occasionally flickered from the machinery. If he could disrupt the energy flow, even temporarily, maybe he could free the city. Maybe he could save his friends. Time seemed to stretch. Every second felt like an hour. The boy's mind was sharp, calculating, but his body ached with tension. He moved silently, almost floating across the frozen city square. Every detail mattered. The position of frozen guards, the angle of floating debris, the pattern of the energy flowing to machines. He reached the control panel. It was massive, covered with glowing buttons and levers. He hesitated. One wrong move could destroy him. Or worse, alert the aliens to his presence. But he knew he had no choice. Humans couldn't stay frozen forever. If he didn't act, the city, the people, everything would remain paralyzed. He placed his hand on the controls. Sparks flared at his touch, a warning or a welcome. He couldn't tell. The machine hummed louder, energy pulsing through its veins. He took a deep breath and pressed the first button. Immediately, alarms flashed across the room. Screens lit up with red warnings. The frozen guards twitched slightly, as if sensing the disturbance. The boy's heart raced. He had triggered something. But what? Then a sudden movement caught his eye. One alien leader, the one closest to the control panel, had blinked. Just once, but it was enough. The device was aware. The human could feel its attention, sharp and invasive, like a predator sensing prey. He had to act fast. He moved to another lever, adjusting energy flows, redirecting power. Sparks danced across the control panel, and for a moment, he felt a surge of hope. The frozen city around him trembled slightly. Some smaller objects shifted, almost imperceptibly. Progress. But it wasn't enough. The device was too strong. He could only influence small parts, temporary effects. The real challenge lay ahead. Understanding how the aliens had built this machine, and how to destroy completely the sudden creak echoed to the control room. The boy froze again. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement. A frozen guard had started to tip slightly, as if gravity itself was rebelling against the device. This was his chance. He dashed forward, leaping over the edge of the falling guard, and reached the secondary panel. Here, the controls seemed older, less advanced, perhaps a weak point. He flipped a series of switches, his fingers trembling. Sparks flew, energy crackled. The air seemed to hum, alive with the tension of frozen movement and unstoppable power. Suddenly, the control center shook violently. Floating debris spun in slow motion, almost hypnotically. The boy felt a thrill of fear and excitement. He had done something the aliens hadn't anticipated, but he couldn't celebrate yet. The device was still active, still powerful. From a distance, the alien leaders twitched more noticeably now. Their awareness of the human had increased. The boy realized he was no longer just observing. He was now part of the system, part of the conflict. Every move he made mattered. Every misstep could be fatal. He backed away from the panel, heart pounding. He needed to plan his next move. This was only the beginning. He had made a small dent in the device's power, but the aliens were intelligent, resourceful, and dangerous. The boy looked around the frozen city one last time. Vehicles hovered in midair, guards stood frozen like statues, and energy from the device pulsed across the cityscape like an invisible heartbeat. He felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. He was alone, but he was moving. He was alive, and for the first time, he realized he might have a chance to change everything. He stepped into the shadows, preparing for what came next. The aliens would notice him soon. The device would respond. But for now, he had won a small victory, a small, crucial turning point. And in that moment, he understood one thing clearly. This was only the beginning of a battle far larger than he'd ever imagined. The frozen city stretched endlessly before him, a canvas of chaos and opportunity. The human was moving, alive in a world that had stopped. And as he disappeared into shadows, a spark of hope ignited, a spark that could change the fate of the entire city. The city remained still, froze like a painting, but the boy, still moving, had grown more confident. He had survived the first encounter, had touched the heart of the alien technology, and now he was determined to learn its limits. Every breath was quiet, cautious, careful. Every movement mattered. He moved through the streets like a shadow, stepping over frozen debris and suspended vehicles. The world around him looked peaceful, but he knew better. Danger hid in every frozen corner, waiting for the smallest mistake. His eyes scanned the area for any sign of movement, any twitch that might betray the aliens' awareness of him. He stopped in front of a frozen patrol drone. It hovered midair, spinning slightly, its sensors aimed at nothing. He knelt, studying it. "So this is their technology," he whispered. "It can freeze everything, but not me." A thought struck him. If he could figure out why he could move, maybe he could find a way to manipulate the device. Maybe he could turn it against the aliens. He reached out, touching the drone gently. Nothing happened. He pushed it lightly. Still nothing. Then, a small spark of electricity arced from the machine, crackling in the air. He jumped back, heart pounding. The device was alive, reacting, but it couldn't stop him. Excited, he decided to test his limits. He ran toward the nearest intersection. Normally, a human running at this speed would kick up dust, make noise, attract attention. But here, the world remained frozen. Leaves hovered in midair. Cars hung like statues, and a bird, frozen mid-flap, glared at him with glassy eyes. He pushed himself faster. He jumped over a floating car, rolled under a levitating drone, and dodged frozen guards without difficulty. His mind raced. "I can move anywhere. I can do anything, but I have to be careful." As he sprinted through the city, he noticed subtle patterns in the gravity field. Smaller objects like pebbles or scraps of metal occasionally trembled. It was as if the device's power was stronger in some areas and weaker in others. The boy's eyes narrowed. This was valuable information. If he could find the weak points, he might find a way to disrupt the alien's control. He stopped near a frozen plaza, catching his breath. The city was enormous, filled with alien machines and structures unlike anything he had seen on Earth. Towering spires glowed faintly, energy lines snaked across the streets, and massive gates shimmered in the light. He realized that the city was more than just a stronghold. It was a fortress built around the gravity device. A sudden noise made him freeze. A faint hum, almost imperceptible, came from a building nearby. His heart skipped a beat. Something was changing. The device was reacting to his presence. He crouched behind a floating vehicle, peeking around carefully. From inside the building, he could see shadows moving, not frozen, but almost like afterimages. Something was shifting. The human realized with a jolt. The aliens were adapting. They had noticed him. Or perhaps the device itself was aware. He had to be cautious. He could no longer move freely without risk. Every step now required planning. He thought back to the control panel he had touched yesterday, the energy pulsing through the city, the sparks flying, the small tremors he had caused. If he could replicate that effect on a larger scale, he might create an advantage. The boy took a deep breath and began experimenting. He touched a floating drone, then a suspended car, then a frozen guard. Each time, the objects reacted differently. Some trembled slightly, some emitted sparks, and a few even shifted positions for a moment before returning to frozen stillness. It was fascinating, terrifying, and full of potential. "Maybe I can control it," he whispered, almost to himself. The thought was daring, dangerous, and thrilling. He could almost feel the power humming beneath his fingers, like electricity waiting to be unleashed. Suddenly, the ground shook slightly. A massive vehicle, frozen mid-motion, tipped dangerously to one side. The boy leaped out of the way just in time. His heart raced. The device's field was unstable. Perhaps his previous interference had weakened it, even slightly. He took a calculated risk, running faster than he ever had. He leapt onto a floating drone. It wobbled but didn't fall. He pushed off, landing on a frozen guard. Each jump, each movement, was a test, a way to probe the limits of the device without alerting the aliens too soon. Then came the moment of pure danger. From a distance, he saw one of the alien leaders twitch. Their eyes glowed brighter, and their hand moved slightly. He had been detected, or at least sensed. Panic surged in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Every instinct, every thought, screamed at him to run, hide, survive. He darted toward a narrow alleyway, ducking under floating debris. The air felt heavy, charged with energy. Sparks flickered from exposed wires, and the device hummed louder, as if angry, as if it could feel his movements. In the alley, he paused, catching his breath. He noticed something he hadn't before. Smaller devices, like sensors, dotted the walls. They monitored the gravity field, reacting to disturbances. If he could disable them, even temporarily, he could gain more freedom. He climbed up a frozen drain pipe to reach one of the sensors. It was delicate, covered in thin wires and blinking lights. His fingers trembled as he carefully disconnected it. Sparks flew, and the device hummed louder. For a brief moment, he felt a rush of triumph. One sensor down. One small step toward freedom. But the victory was short-lived. From a corner of his eye, he saw a frozen drone start to tilt, then spin, as if reacting to his interference. Alarm flashed in his mind. He had been noticed. The device was adapting faster than he expected. The boy had to think. Fast. He looked around the alley, calculating his next move. Floating debris, frozen vehicles, and suspended drones formed a chaotic maze. He could use it to his advantage, but one wrong step, and he would be trapped, crushed, or discovered. He sprinted, ducking under a floating car, rolling over a small drone, and vaulting onto a frozen guard. His movements were precise, careful, almost like a dance. Each step tested the boundaries of the gravity field. Each leap, each dodge was a gamble. By the time he reached the edge of the district, he was breathing heavily. Sweat dripped down his face, even though the air was still. The city remained frozen, but he felt a thrill unlike anything he had ever known. He had tested the limits of the device. He had learned its weaknesses, and he had survived. But he also knew this. The aliens were intelligent, resourceful, and dangerous. They would adapt. They would notice the disturbances. And they would act. The boy crouched behind a frozen vehicle, watching the city. Sparks flickered from damaged sensors. Drones wobbled, and a few guards had shifted slightly, though they remained mostly frozen. It was not enough to defeat the aliens yet, but it was enough to give him hope. He had discovered something important. He could move, even in a world that had stopped. And with that movement, he could change the game. He could challenge the aliens, disrupt their technology, and maybe, just maybe, save his friends. A faint rumble echoed from the center of the city. The device pulsed, energy waves radiating outward. The boy realized with a jolt that this was only the beginning. The aliens were preparing something. A counterattack, a trap, a way to neutralize him. He had to plan carefully. Every move from now on would matter. He couldn't afford mistakes. The fate of the city, the humans, perhaps even the entire world, depended on him. As he disappeared into the shadows of the frozen city, a spark of determination lit his eyes. He had tested the limits, faced danger, and survived. And he knew one thing clearly. The next move would be even more dangerous, even more thrilling. The gravity device had not defeated him. The aliens had not caught him. And the boy, moving in a frozen world, was ready to push the limits further. He had tested the limits. And now, he was ready to strike back. The boy crouched behind the floating remains of a vehicle, his heart hammering in his chest. The city was still frozen around him, but the air seemed alive with energy, like the tension of a storm about to break. Every flicker of light, every tiny movement in the distance made him jump. The aliens were adapting, responding to his experiments, and he knew he couldn't waste another moment. He took a deep breath and planned his path. The alien command center loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and glowing energy. That was the source of the gravity device, the heart of their power. If he could get inside, maybe he could strike a real blow, something that could change the balance of this frozen city. Every step was dangerous. Drones hovered silently. Frozen guards blocked streets, and strange machinery hummed in the shadows. The boy moved with precision, using the frozen city as cover. He leaped over suspended cars, rolled under floating debris, and slipped past the sharp gaze of a frozen alien leader. Finally, he reached the edge of the command center. Massive doors, glowing with alien symbols, blocked the way. He studied the structure carefully. This was not just a building. It was a fortress designed to withstand any attack. But the boy was clever. He noticed a maintenance shaft at the side, a narrow passage for repairs, and small access. It was risky, but it might be his only way inside. He slipped into the shaft, moving quietly. The air was thick with energy, sparks dancing along the walls. The hum of the gravity device was louder here, vibrating through the metal and into his bones. He had never felt anything like it, power so absolute that it could freeze everything in its reach. As he crawled deeper, he noticed something unusual. A small panel of wires had been exposed, probably from a previous repair. A thought sparked in his mind. If he could manipulate the wiring, even slightly, maybe he could disrupt the device from the inside. It was dangerous, risky, maybe even suicidal. But he had no choice. He worked quickly, connecting wires and patterns he had never seen before, redirecting small amount of energy. Sparks flew, and the hum of the device changed pitch, almost like it was noticing the interference. The boy's heart pounded, but he didn't stop. One wrong move, and the whole system could explode. One wrong move and he could die. Suddenly, the floor shook. He froze. From outside the shaft, he could hear a low vibration, like machinery coming to life. The aliens had noticed the disturbance. He held his breath, barely daring to move. Then, slowly, he continued, flipping another switch, rerouting energy through the panel. The device shuddered. Sparks flew across the room. Small machines tilted, and some of the frozen guards twitched. It was working. For the first time, he could feel the device weakening, at least slightly. The boy's confidence grew. He was not just surviving, he was striking back. But then came the moment of real danger. A sound echoed through the shaft, a metallic clang, followed by a low hum that vibrated through the walls. He looked up and saw one of the alien leaders moving just slightly. Their eyes glowed brighter, scanning the shaft as if they could sense him. Panic surged, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to think fast. The shaft was narrow, with no room to fight. He couldn't afford a confrontation here. He had to be clever, to outsmart the alien. He noticed a small ventilation grate above him. It was thin, almost fragile, but it might allow him to escape if the aliens approached. Carefully, he climbed, feeling the metal bend slightly under his weight. Every second counted. Every move could alert the enemy. Finally, he reached the grate and slipped through, emerging into the control room. The sight took his breath away. The room was massive, filled with glowing machinery, swirling energy, and dozens of frozen guards. At the center, a massive console pulsed with light, the brain of the gravity device. He ducked behind a console, studying the patterns of energy flowing through the room. He noticed weak points, spots where the energy field was thinner, areas that might be manipulated. He had one chance, one careful, calculated chance. Moving silently, he slipped from console to console, reaching the edge of the central platform. From here, he could see the main control panel clearly. It was enormous, covered in glowing levers and buttons, each one pulsing with alien energy. His fingers itched to touch it, to flip a switch, to reroute the power, but he paused. One mistake could trigger alarms, alert the aliens, and end his life instantly. He studied the layout, memorizing every detail. Guards stood frozen, drones hovered, and energy lines crisscrossed the room. Then, he noticed a pattern. Every few seconds, the energy pulsed stronger in certain areas. These pulses could be used, if timed correctly, to amplify his interference with the device. The boy took a deep breath. Timing, precision, and courage, that was all he needed. He reached for the first lever, flipping it slowly. Sparks flew, and the hum of the device shifted. A frozen guard twitched slightly. A small victory. Then he flipped the second lever. Energy surged through the room, lights flickering, alarms almost silent but present. The boy felt a thrill of fear and excitement. He was changing the game. But it was not over. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement. One alien leader had broken free from the freeze, moving deliberately toward him. Panic surged. He had been discovered. The boy acted instinctively. He grabbed a small control panel, redirecting energy toward the approaching alien. Sparks flew, machines shook, and the leader was thrown back, frozen mid-step again. The boy's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had survived the first encounter, and now he had struck back. The control room was in chaos. Energy surged, machinery sparked, and frozen guards twitched. The boy had disrupted the device, weakened his control, and demonstrated that he could fight back. But he knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would regroup. They would adapt. They would strike harder next time. He ducked behind another console, catching his breath. The room hummed with energy. The lights flickered, and the machinery groaned under the strain. He had accomplished something incredible, something dangerous, something that could change the course of the battle. But the human boy was not done. He had learned the power of the device, understood its limits, and tested his own courage. He had proven that even in a world frozen by alien technology, a single human could move, act, and strike back. And as he disappeared into the shadows of the control room, a new plan formed in his mind. He would push further, test more limits, and find a way to turn the aliens' own technology against them. The city was frozen. The aliens were powerful, but he was clever, fast, and determined. The boy had struck back. And now, the real battle was just beginning. The frozen city quivered, though nothing seemed to move. At least, nothing except the human boy. He crouched behind a floating vehicle, watching the pulses of the gravity device flicker in the distance. Sparks of blue and violet energy cracked through the air as the device struggled to maintain control. For the first time, he saw real signs of failure. A floating patrol drone wobbled dangerously, a frozen alien soldier twitched violently, and distant vehicles tilted as if gravity itself had rebelled. The boy's eyes widened. His interference yesterday, his clever maneuvers today, he had caused a chain reaction. Chaos was spreading. He didn't wait. Every second counted. Leaping onto a frozen guard, rolling under a suspended vehicle, and vaulting over a tilted drone, he raced toward the heart of the city. Every step he took amplified the instability of the device. Energy pulses flashed in waves, the humming growing louder, almost screaming in protest. The boy reached the edge of the central plaza and paused. Before him, the alien leaders were still frozen, but their forms were distorted. Limbs twitched, eyes glowed erratically, and the energy lines connecting them to the gravity device throbbed and flickered. The human realized the aliens were losing control, but not fast enough. He had to strike strategically. He darted between floating debris, using his knowledge of the device's weaknesses. The ground trembled with each step as energy lines arced across the city like lightning. Sparks leapt from buildings, some melting the surfaces they touched. It was dangerous, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Suddenly, a massive drone broke free from its frozen state. It hovered, spinning, sensors glowing. The boy's stomach tightened. This was no longer a test. This was real battle. He dove behind a floating car, rolling across its roof, narrowly avoiding the drone's spinning blades. He reached for a control panel nearby, flipping switches to redirect the energy pulses. Sparks flew, and the drone shuddered violently, crashing into the plaza below. The boy's eyes scanned the chaos. Everywhere he looked, the city was alive with movement. Floating cars toppled, suspended buildings groaned, and energy lines cracked and sparked. The aliens' perfect control had collapsed. Their gravity hacking device, once absolute, was faltering under his interference. A sudden alarm rang out in the distance. Though everything else was frozen, the sound vibrated through the air. The alien leaders were reacting. Slowly, deliberately, one of them began to move. Limbs stretched, glowing eyes focused on the boy. Panic flashed in his mind, but he forced himself to stay calm. Every second of hesitation could cost him his life. He darted forward, dodging sparks and debris. The plaza was chaotic, unpredictable. Floating vehicles tipped, drones fell, and guards froze and twitched in unpredictable patterns. The boy realized the gravity field's instability was his ally, but also a danger. One wrong step, and he could be crushed, electrocuted, or trapped. He reached the central power conduit, a thick tube pulsing with energy from the device. He knew if he could disrupt it, even slightly, he could amplify the chaos, giving himself a major advantage. His hands trembled as he gripped the conduit, rerouting energy to smaller nodes around the city. Sparks danced across his fingers, but he didn't flinch. The city trembled, buildings tilting slightly, vehicles spinning midair. From a command tower above, an alien leader finally moved fully. It lifted a hand, sending waves of energy through the device. The boy staggered as a pulse hit him. throwing him against a floating car. Pain shot through his body, but he clenched his teeth and pushed forward. He could feel the city shaking, almost alive, responding to his every move. He leaped to another conduit, flipping switches with calculated precision. Energy arcs cracked through the air, hitting frozen guards, drones, and vehicles. Sparks flew, machines tilted, and some of the frozen soldiers fell to ground, finally freed from the alien control. The boy's eyes lit with determination. "This is it," he whispered. "Time to finish this chaos." The ground shook violently. Floating debris crashed to the streets, vehicles toppled, and buildings groaned under the strain. The alien leaders were frantic now, trying to stabilize the device, but the boy had disrupted too many critical nodes. The city itself seemed to rebel against its controllers. He darted toward the command tower, using every shortcut he had discovered in the frozen city. Energy arcs illuminated the streets, showing the destruction he had caused. Sparks from broken conduits scorched frozen guards, and drones fell like meteors from the sky. The boy's heart raced, but he felt unstoppable. He had become the catalyst of chaos. Inside the command tower, he paused, catching his breath. The room was alive with energy, pulsing erratically. The main control panel glowed dangerously, sparks flying with every pulse. He had one chance to strike a decisive blow, to turn the tide completely. He studied the energy lines running from the device. A pattern emerged, weak points, spots where the pulses could be redirected, nodes that could amplify the chaos even further. He reached for a lever, pulling it with all his strength. Sparks flew violently. Machines groaned and the city trembled. Suddenly, a massive wave of energy surged outward. Floating vehicles tipped, drones spun out of control, and frozen guards collapsed in heaps. The alien leaders screamed in frustration, but the human boy didn't stop. He moved from node to node, flipping switches, rerouting energy and amplifying the chaos. From the top of the command tower, the alien leaders tried to regain control, but it was too late. The gravity device was failing, broken in ways they could not repair quickly. The city shook violently, energy arcs lighting up the sky like lightning storms. Buildings tilted, some collapsing partially, and vehicles crashed into the streets in slow motion. The boy watched it all, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. He was alive, moving freely, and the aliens' perfect control was collapsing. He had turned their own technology against them, created chaos, and survived. But the victory came at a cost. The city was in ruins, unstable, dangerous. Energy pulses flickered unpredictably, threatening to strike at any moment. The boy had to escape before the chaos consumed him. He sprinted through the streets, dodging floating debris and falling structures. Sparks flew, energy arcs cracked dangerously, and frozen guards toppled unpredictably. The city was alive with destruction, a living battlefield of chaos. At the edge of the city, he paused, looking back. The gravity device flickered one last time, then collapsed entirely. The alien leaders, frozen again, had no control. The boy smiled briefly, exhausted but victorious. "This is just the beginning," he whispered. "They will come back, but I'll be ready." He disappeared into the shadows, moving freely in a world that had once stopped. The chaos he had unleashed was a warning, a message. The humans could fight back, adapt, and survive. The frozen city, now trembling with instability, was a testament to one human's courage. The aliens had underestimated him. Their perfect device had failed, and the boy had proven that even in the face of absolute power, one clever mind could turn the tide. And as the city settled into uneasy silence, he knew the final confrontation was coming. The aliens would return, stronger, smarter, more dangerous. But the boy was ready. He had survived the chaos. He had learned the power of the device. He had struck back, and he would strike again. The human boy crouched on the edge of a shattered rooftop, staring down at the alien command tower. Its walls were cracked, energy lines flickering wildly. The city below was a mess of floating debris, sparks flying like tiny meteors, and frozen vehicles tipped dangerously. The gravity device, once the ultimate weapon, was unstable. Its hum was erratic, like a wounded creature, but its power was still deadly. He knew the aliens would not give up. They had been defeated once, but they were intelligent, ruthless, and adaptive. The final showdown was coming, and he had no choice but to face it head-on. He leaped from the rooftop, landing silently among the wreckage. Every muscle was tense, every sense alert. The device's energy pulsed through the city, unpredictable and dangerous. He had studied its patterns, tested its limits, and now he would use that knowledge to strike decisively. Inside the command tower, the alien leader, towering, armored, and glowing with power, stood at the central control panel. Its eyes blazed, scanning the chaos outside. It had rebuilt part of the device's energy network, but the human had weakened the core, and now the alien's control was fragmented. The boy approached from the shadows. He moved like a ghost through the chaos, leaping over floating debris, sliding under tilted vehicles, and vaulting over frozen guards. Each movement was precise, calculated, a dance between life and death. Sparks from broken conduits flew around him, and the hum of the device vibrated in his bones. He reached the main control room and froze. The alien leader was not alone. Robotic drones hovered nearby, glowing with energy, their weapons trained on him. One misstep, and he could be vaporized instantly. He clenched his fists, calculating his moves. He didn't just need courage. He needed cleverness. The first drone moved, swift, precise, and deadly. The boy ducked behind a console, then rolled across the floor, flipping a lever on the way. Sparks shot out. The drone shuddered, and he jumped over it, landing behind a pile of floating debris. He could see the alien leader now, hands moving over the control panel, trying desperately to stabilize the device. He had one chance. One precise move could destroy the device completely, ending the alien's control and freeing the city. But the timing had to be perfect. He darted toward a conduit leading directly to the core of the gravity device. Energy arcs danced around it, crackling with deadly power. The boy ignored the fear in his chest, focusing only on his plan. He leaped onto the conduit, sliding across its surface, dodging sparks and energy pulses. The alien leader noticed him finally, its eyes narrowing. It raised a hand, sending a pulse of energy through the room. The boy was thrown sideways, hitting the wall hard. Pain shot through his body, but he didn't stop. He gritted his teeth and scrambled to his feet. The conduit vibrated under his weight, energy crackling dangerously close. He reached the core panel and began flipping switches, redirecting energy and overloading circuits. Sparks flew violently, machines groaned, and the gravity device pulsed uncontrollably. The alien leader roared, raising its hand again. A wave of energy shot toward him. The boy rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding it, and leaped toward a secondary panel. If he could manipulate this panel correctly, he could amplify the overload, creating a chain reaction that would destroy the device entirely. He worked frantically, fingers moving faster than he had ever moved before. Sparks flew, conduits exploded, and drones toppled like toys. The alien leader moved closer, more aggressive, but the boy had a plan. He flipped one final switch, redirecting the core energy directly toward the alien leader. A massive pulse of energy surged through the room. The alien leader screamed as arcs of blue and violet lightning engulfed it. Sparks flew everywhere. Drones toppled, and the control panel cracked violently. The gravity device shuddered, then exploded in a blinding flash of light. The force threw the boy across the room, but he managed to land safely behind a pile of rubble. The city trembled violently. Floating vehicles crashed. Debris fell from buildings, and the air was filled with sparks and smoke. The gravity device was destroyed. Its hum was gone, replaced by silence. The frozen soldiers, drones, and vehicles collapsed back to ground, free at last from alien control. The boy stood, exhausted, his body aching, but his eyes burned with triumph. He had done the impossible. One human had struck back, survived, and defeated the alien's ultimate weapon. From the ruins of Command Tower, the alien leader staggered, weakened but still alive. It glared at him with hatred, but it could do nothing. Its control was gone. The boy stepped forward, fists clenched, ready to finish the fight if necessary. But then the alien leader paused. It looked around at the destruction, at the chaos it could no longer control. Its eyes, once blazing with power, dimmed slightly. The boy realized something important. The aliens were intelligent, yes, but they were also capable of fear. They could recognize defeat, and now they had no choice but to retreat. The leader signaled to its remaining forces, and one by one, they vanished, retreating into the shadows. The human boy watched silently, understanding that this victory was hard-won, but necessary. He had saved the city, freed countless lives, and proven that even one determined human could change the fate of an entire world. He stepped outside the command tower. The city was in ruins, but alive. Humans who had been captured, frozen, or trapped were emerging, blinking in disbelief at the destruction around them. They saw him, moving freely victorious, and a cheer rose, a sound of hope and triumph. The boy didn't smile immediately. He knew this was only the beginning. The aliens might return, stronger and smarter, but he had learned something invaluable. Courage, cleverness, and determination could overcome even the greatest odds. He walked through the ruined city streets, stepping over debris, watching survivors cautiously. The air was heavy with smoke. Sparks still flew from damaged machinery, but there was a sense of freedom. Freedom that had been impossible just hours ago. From the shattered command tower, the boy looked up at the sky. The city was still, but not frozen. The energy lines from the gravity device flickered weakly, then vanished entirely. Silence returned, not oppressive, but liberating. He took a deep breath. One human had moved where no one else could. One human had struck back against impossible power. And one human had survived. The final showdown was over. The aliens had been defeated. The gravity device was destroyed. The city, broken but free, could begin to heal. And as the boy disappeared into the shadows, moving freely through the liberated city, he understood something clear and simple. Even in a world controlled by unimaginable power, a single human could change everything. The battle was won, but the adventure was just beginning. The city would rebuild, the humans would recover, and somewhere out there, the aliens would plan their next move. But one truth remained. Courage, cleverness, and determination would always find a way to survive. The human boy had proven it.